While the source of air pollution impacting children in rural and urban areas may differ, whether from vehicle emissions or pesticides, there's one source of pollution that doesn't discriminate and impacts both: wildfires. Wildfire season, which historically took place in summer and fall, is a thing of the past. We are now seeing wildfire years, seasons that last all year long. And wildfires, once confined to remote wilderness areas, are now encroaching upon communities, leaving a trail of destruction in their wake. And as the flames consume everything in their path, they release a silent killer into the air, a toxic cocktail of smoke, ash, and harmful pollutants. And this cocktail has been known to travel thousands of miles, affecting nearly everyone on the planet, most especially children.
So fire smoke we think of as soot, right? It's kind of like little black ashes flying around, but it's actually so much more than that. There are different sizes of particulates. We call them PM, particulate matter, that are smaller than a grain of sand and 10 to 100 times smaller than the width of a human hair. Now, the difficult part about these small particulates that we inhale when we are breathing in smoke from a fire is that they are highly irritating to the lining of the lungs, those little sacs, those alveoli, right? So they actually cause damage to those alveoli. They also act like allergens in that they cause swelling, inflammation and swelling inside the lungs and the tubes that go down into the lungs, the bronchioles, etc. And they're not just inert. So we think, oh yeah, it's like a piece of a burned, tree bark or something. No, because now we've moved out of the realm of wood smoke and into the realm of building smoke, these particulates, both the big ones and the tiny ones that get into our bloodstream, are composed of metals. So there can be tiny microparticulates of arsenic and cadmium and mercury specifically. There can be pesticides. There can be solvents like benzene. So there are lots of chemicals that are coming into our lungs, not just soot. And these chemicals are coming in both to cause an allergic reaction and to cause a chemical toxic reaction. And we don't talk very much about asthma as a result of chemical exposure. Mostly people know that their kids or they are allergic to something. And I love the CDC quote. They have the beginning slide says, "We don't really know what causes asthma, but we do know how to treat it." And I want to say that's not true. We absolutely know what causes asthma. Things we're not supposed to be breathing in cause asthma. And that's everything from the outdoor pollution we've talked about, to fire smoke, to the indoor pollution that we're going to talk about. And this is a very important piece of information that doctors not only don't know about, but they don't know how to address. So back to wildfire smoke. So wildfire smoke has plastics, pesticides, metals, and other chemicals in it. And so that's a lot of pollution going into the lungs that can trigger asthma. Now, just like pesticides and allergens, the lung lining fluid is bathed in all these antioxidants that are there for a reason. The more toxicants we put in, the less antioxidants, especially glutathione, there is to deal with that toxic burden. And so when we're talking about wildfire smoke, it's not just enough to say, well, we'll just give our kids and ourselves more antioxidants and we'll be okay, because that burden is just too much for the antioxidant system to deal with. We have to protect our lungs from exposure to that smoke any way we can. There's a whole town actually in Montana, Sealy, Montana, which is right outside of Missoula, where they're actually following a whole cohort of people, looking at their capacity to breathe, their pulmonary capacity, and their health from the period of 2017 when they were hit really hard with wildfires up to now. And even though they haven't been hit with any wildfire smoke after, they were kind of inundated for a period of a couple of weeks. That's all it was. Their capacity, their vital capacity, their ability to breathe is declining faster than it would normally over time. So as we age, that vital capacity declines. It doesn't have to, but it does. And theirs is declining even faster, even though all they were exposed to was that really bad wildfire smoke in 2017. So this is an ongoing study of this cohort of people that they publish, the data on their pulmonary function. And yes, their asthma is getting worse, even though they haven't been beset with really bad wildfire smoke since. So that initial event can cause long-term consequences.
It's clear both urban and rural geographical areas can have dangerous levels of pollution, which means schools everywhere are at risk. That's because outdoor air quality plays a significant role in determining the quality of the air that we breathe indoors. As pollutants like ozone, particulate matter, they can seep in through the windows and doors. For more on the connection between indoor air and outdoor air in schools, I spoke with Dr. Anne-Marie Fine, another founding director of Environmental Medicine Education International and a member and fellow of the American Academy of Environmental Medicine.
The number one thing impacting the health of adults, teenagers, children, and pregnant moms, I believe, is indoor air, because indoor air is many times more toxic than outdoor air. They've done studies in LA, which is polluted, and they've looked at even the most polluted parts of LA. They've tested the outdoor air and they've tested the indoor air, and the indoor air always turns out to be more polluted than the outdoor air, because our houses begin with whatever's on the outside. There's no place else we're getting our air, and then we're adding more things into it. Our indoor air begins with our outdoor air, and on top of that, the building materials are off-gassing, the carpet, the glues, the adhesives are off-gassing chemicals, the paint is off-gassing, the couch is off-gassing flame retardants, and there's Teflon covers and PFAS off-gassing. The plug-in air fresheners are particularly problematic because they are off-gassing benzene and formaldehyde and phthalates into the air.
As the link between air pollution and childhood asthma becomes increasingly evident across the country in both old and new school buildings, a new and troubling reality is emerging. The insidious effects of polluted air extend far beyond the lungs, infiltrating children's bodies and minds with devastating consequences. Studies have shown a concerning correlation between exposure to air pollution and not just asthma, but also a range of comorbidities, including attention issues, psychiatric disorders, and cognitive impairments. The toll of polluted air on young brains is becoming impossible to ignore.
There's a brand new study that came out recently that looked at children in Boston, and they looked at information and air pollution based on, I think, 22 different air quality stations that were around. And what they found in Massachusetts was there was a loss of 2 million total IQ points in these children, which amounts to about 2 IQ points per child. And what's really significant about this is that Massachusetts is not India. Massachusetts is not China. All of their pollution levels were they were below EPA standards, and they're still finding that there are public health effects. It's heartbreaking when The kids are sickened by something in their school and they can't think, because that follows them around the rest of their life. They don't do as well, they get poor grades, maybe they're ADHD, maybe they're acting out. The school is looking at them like a problem child, when really if they were in a safe and clean environment, they would do just fine.
There have been some really good studies, and I think you were involved in one of them at least, where asthma incidence in children was related to the proximity of the school to a major highway or freeway. And I think this was done in California, right, in Southern California. So what's in the air near a highway? We have something called a diesel exhaust particle. Diesel exhaust particles are specific types of exhaust particles that come off of diesel engines. They include solvents, because solvents are part of gasoline when it gets combusted. There are also other solvents like formaldehyde that are considered major carcinogens. That are formaldehyde actually was just reclassified as an extremely hazardous pollutant recently. And so there's a lot of formaldehyde that is just part of vehicular exhaust. So we've got high levels of solvents in the air, high levels of particulate matter, and we have actually elevated levels of lead. This is not talked about very much, but there is good data that shows that the lead weights that are used to balance out tires, they fall off. They don't always stay on, and they get smashed, and they actually become part of the expo zone in the air. And we know that lead is a neurotoxin. It is very, very closely tied to IQ, incidence of ADHD, intellectual development. I work with a colleague who actually was instrumental in passing some legislation in the state of Washington related to school bus idling. That doesn't happen anymore as a result of that legislation, because of his experience with his pediatric patients who were much more at risk for episodes, meaning asthma attacks, as well as difficulty breathing when they were exposed to that idling diesel exhaust. So, it gets back to the proximity to the freeway, proximity to the highway.
While the health and well-being of children is certainly the most important factor, it's hard to ignore the economic impact that dirty air has on schools. I spoke with experts at Grant Management Associates about the complex interplay between air quality, performance, and financial resources that has become increasingly more evident.
And not to make it a money issue, but that's how they compensate schools. If the kid's not there, they don't get the money. And of course, health's the most important thing. We care about people, but it's got a finance aspect to it. If you're sick and have asthma, you can't learn. Setting that table of air quality is critical. We don't think about it sometimes, but it's very important for schools to set an environment where kids can learn, and air quality is right up there at the top.
Watch for part 3 of our docuseries tomorrow, where we take an in-depth look at the solutions available for schools and families to help asthmatic children breathe better. See you tomorrow.